Yo!
Hi, welcome back.
What's up?
What's up, chicken bits?
This is your DJ of the half hour, DJ Avalon, and
Sabrina.
in the house. Okay, I'm getting.
What are we?
I don't know. Your entertainment for the hour?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds kind of dirty.
Oh, it did, now that you mentioned it. I wasn't thinking it was, but you mentioned it.
We started drinking, so this might get a little entertaining.
A little bit.
Just, I don't know. I don't have a name for you.
Suffocating.
Here, you can sit in the middle.
There we go.
Since Chewy is not feeling so good right now.
No, the baby.
Yeah, he had to go to the vet. He's not feeling good. He got diarrhea. He got the runs.
The Hershey squirtsies.
The Hershey squirts.
Yes.
The squirts of Hershey's.
Uh-huh. So our last chapter was really long.
It was very long.
A lot happened, but I guess I just really remembered the ending because I just kind of...
Damon yanked
Oh yeah, Damon yanked up Elena. I was about to say a different name. I was like, no. No. Wrong reality. So Damon peeled her up and then explained how badly he wants her. He's like, are you sure you don't want me?
Are you sure?
I want you so bad.
I could take Stefan out of the picture for you.
Yeah, that's what he said to Elena. And Elena's like, oh, I'd rather have anything else than that ever happen. Or I would rather cut my throat. And Damon's like, I can make it so much more enjoyable for you. Oh my god.
And then she's like, swan dive over the edge of the house.
Yes, she swan dive over the edge of the house. And like he woo, basically to the side. And like I guess he caught her at the last minute.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't he had his guard down.
Darn.
But he got her. And then all said is done. There's something in there with Bonnie. They were talking.
They met up with her in the woods.
Yeah, and then in the gymnasium?
Oh, and then she lied, to them again about Damon being there. She's like, "Oh yeah, I almost got caught. I had to wait."
And then wherever I feel like they were in a gymnasium. Maybe I was just imagining wrong. But
no,
the end,
he said they were talking about Vicky.
Yeah,
they were talking about Vicky, and oh no, because Vicky walked through the hallway.
Yes, all in her zone, and then starts feeling up Tyler and taking off his jacket, and then
in front
his
of her
shirt.
boyfriend.
Yeah, in front of her boyfriend, and everyone's trying to stop her from it. I like that, and and she starts she pushed him down to the floor and started chomping at his neck. And Alaric's like, oh, she's having a seizure. It's epilepsy, so we gotta help her. So it took 4 or 5 of them to hold her back, whatever. And then Stefan was using his powers to calm her down, and it did for only a second. And she turned right around and was going back at it. And it took all 5 of them again to hold her back. And then she gets out of there. And Elena asks Stefan, is she turning? He's like, well, it depends how much blood is in her system. And that she's under the control of Damon. And that Damon's pretty much sucking her dry.
Yep. So either she's gonna
transform or die. Like what happened to the teacher at the haunted house.
And that's where you got your gymnasium from.
Yeah.
This stuff.
Same thing. Where were we? Meredith will be killed off. See more of Bonnie's powers develop. Catherine is alive as she changes into a cat.
Why don't we have that, what's his face is a werewolf on there?
I think we did, and then we took it off.
Well, we need to put that back on there.
We'll put it back on. Robert will get killed off. Catherine is attacking all the people of the town, all those throat slashing attacks. And Caroline is being manipulated by Catherine. Bubba Boy.
Come here.
Bubba Boy, come here, Bubba.
Come here.
Come on, Bubba.
Yeah, that's my buddy. I know you're having a hard time. I know.
It's
You
okay,
wanna come up here?
Come on,
We'll
Chewy.
scoot
Watch
over.
your cords.
There we go. I know, buddy.
Yeah. Yay,
baby.
cuddle, cuddle. And that is it for the board.
This couch is not big enough for the three of us.
Just on this side. For the time being.
It's an L-shaped. But
anyways, on to chapter 12. We're almost done with the book. How many chapters do we have left? Like 3?
1, 2, 3, 4. Is that an epilogue? That's the next book. Yeah, 4.
Nice.
Woo!
Okie dokie,
We're getting
artichoke.
nice and cozy up in here.
I like it.
Oh, do you?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Are we gonna have a what's it called? Vicky moment?
No.
No.
Keep your paws and teeth to yourself. And the coughs to that direction.
I'm trying. Asthma.
It sucks, doesn't it?
It does.
It really fucking sucks.
I got diagnosed with asthma.
And I've had asthma my entire life, and it sucks.
I have allergy asthma. Apparently that's a thing.
Just like obese asthma is. Like when you're so fat, you get asthma because there's so much weight on your lungs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. So, not COVID, guys. I swear. I've been vaccinated for a while.
Me too. Me too.
Chapter 12.
Boom.
A voice spoke to Elena, reached for a can on the shelf herself. Wait, what? Sorry. Try that again.
A voice spoke as Elena.
I can read. This is my job.
I was helping you.
My job is to read. Your job is to listen. I just
flumbled.
I
was just
Words are hard. A voice spoke as Elena reached for a can on the store shelf. Cranberry sauce already?
Thanksgiving.
It's not even close to Thanksgiving.
Yes, they just had the Halloween haunted house.
Oh, I thought you meant now. You're like, oh, Thanksgiving. I was like, dude, it's freaking May.
I'm excited for Christmas already and Thanksgiving, so don't even get me started with this.
Hey, yes, I'm not excited for Christmas because I'll be almost 30 and that scares me.
Hey, it's okay. I'll be there with you. We'll be 30 together.
Well, I won't be 30 with 29, but still.
No, but still.
Anyway, Elena looked up. Hi, Matt. Yes, Aunt Judith likes to do a preview the Sunday before Thanksgiving. Remember?
I love Thanksgiving.
If she practices,
and I get 2.
There's less chance she'll do something terrible. Like forgetting to buy the cranberry sauce until 15 minutes before dinner. Until 5 minutes before dinner, said Elena, consulting her watch, and Matt laughed. It was a good sound, and one Elena hadn't heard for so long. She moved on towards the checkout stand, but after she paid for her purchase, she hesitated, looking back. Matt was standing by the magazine rack, apparently absorbed, but there was something about the slope of his shoulders that made her want to go to him. She poked a finger at his magazine. What are you doing for dinner? She said. When he glanced uncertainly towards the front of the store, she added, Bonnie's waiting out in the car. She'll be there. Other than that, it's just family. And Robert, of course. He should be there by now. She meant that Stefan wasn't coming. She still wasn't sure how things were between Matt and Stefan these days. At least they spoke to each other. I'm fending for myself tonight. Mom's not feeling so hot, he said. But then there was, as if to change the subject, he went on, Where's Meredith? With her family visiting some relatives or something. Elena was vague because Meredith had been vague herself. She seldom liked to talk about her family. So what do you think? Want to take a chance on Aunt Judith's cooking? For old time's sake? For old friend's sake, said Elena after a moment's hesitation, and smiled at him. He blinked and looked away. How can I refuse an invitation like that? He said, in an oddly muted voice. But when he put the magazine back and followed her out the store, he was smiling too. Bonnie greeted them cheerfully, and when they got home, Aunt Judith looked pleased to see him come to the kitchen. Dinner's almost ready, she said, looking at the grocery bag from Elena. Robert got here a few minutes ago. Why didn't you go straight back to the dining room? Oh, and get another chair, Elena. Matt makes 7. 6, Aunt Judith, said Elena, amused. You, Robert, me, and Margaret. Matt and Bonnie. Yes, dear, but Robert's brought a guest, too. They're already sitting down.
Oh.
Any guesses? Any guesses?
Catherine or Stefan or Damon?
Well, Catherine really hasn't made an appearance.
No, but I feel like this would be like her grand opportunity. Well, maybe not. Maybe Damon. I think Damon. I say Damon.
I'm gonna say Damon.
I say Damon.
Damon just keeps popping up everywhere.
He's just so charming.
He doesn't seem to want to quit. Elena registered the words as she stepped through the dining room door, but there was an instant's delay before her mind reacted to them. Even so, she knew, stepping through the door, that she somehow knew what was waiting for her. Robert was standing there, fiddling with a bottle of white wine and looking jovial, and sitting across the table on the far side of the autumn centerpiece is the tall lighted candles. It was Damon. Prediction, this is where he dies. This is where Robert dies.
Yes, Damon will kill him.
Bye.
Bye, Bubby.
Bye. Okay. I can scoot back over.
Should spread out.
Yeah. Squish the poor panda. Here.
No, we need a name, guys. Help us come up with a
name.
name.
Hopefully by next week he'll have a name.
Yep.
Maybe he'll join us for a while. I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah. Looking jovial and sitting. Yeah. Elena realized she'd been. Elena. Rewind.
Pause.
Rewind. Pause. Rewind. Rewind one more time.
One more time.
Elena realized she'd stopped moving when Bonnie ran into her from behind. Then she forced her legs into action. Her mind wasn't obedient. It remained frozen. Ah, Elena, Robert said, holding out his hand. This is Elena, the girl I was telling you about, he said to Damon. Elena, this is Damon. Smith, said Damon. Ah, yes. Because remember on the roof?
That was their, yep.
Yep. Ah, that was funny.
He has a humor.
Ah, yes, he's from my alma mater, William and Mary, and I just ran into him outside in the drugstore. Since he's looking for a place to eat, I invited him along here for a home-cooked meal. Damon, these are some of my friends, Elena's, Matt and Bonnie. Hi, said Matt. Bonnie just stared. Then she swung enormous eyes to Elena. Elena was trying to get a grip on it herself. She didn't know whether to shriek, march out of the room, or throw a glass of wine Robert was pouring into Damon's face. She was too angry for the moment to be frightened. Matt went to bring a chair from the living room. Elena, Matt. Oh, Matty
Good old Matt.
Good old Matt, going and getting a chair for Damon.
Mm-hmm.
So sweet.
So kind.
Matt went to bring a chair from the living room. Elena wondered at the casual acceptance of Damon, and then he realized he had been at a lark's party. He wouldn't know what had happened there between Stefan and the visitor from college. Bonnie, though, looked ready to panic. She was gazing at Elena imploringly.
Hello.
Damon had risen and was holding out a chair for her. I don't know, that's just how I imagine her, just like staring, like,
Intensely.
Okay, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. You told me he's a murderer. What's he doing here? Tell me what to do.
Yes, exactly.
Before Elena could come up with a response, she heard Margaret's high little voice in the doorway. Matt, do you want to see my kitty?
You want to rephrase that?
I have to remind myself that that's a little girl that's like 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, do you want to see my kitty?
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Judith says I can keep her. I'm going to call her Snowball. Elena turned, fired at the idea. I just realized something.
I think I did too. It's the same thing.
You want to go first?
Catherine is
The
Snowball cat.
Snowball.
Yes.
You want to see my kitty?
Because Damon or Stefan described them as like both feline features.
Yeah, and we've been talking about the fact that like
Catherine could turn into a cat.
yeah, and they've had like claw marks.
Mm-hmm. Like cat claw marks. This has to be Catherine.
I bet it's Catherine. I bet money it's Catherine.
And she's been spying on everybody.
She needed to make an appearance by the end of this book because we only got 4 chapters left. Come on.
Yeah.
Here we go.
This is it. I told you Catherine would be there.
Yep. Here it is.
Here it is.
Here it is. She's making her appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Elena turned, fired at the idea. She's cute, Matt said, saying, obligingly bending over the little mound of white fur in Margaret's arms. He looked startled as Elena's unceremoniously grabbed the kitten from under his nose. Here, Margaret, let's show your kitty to Robert's friend. she said, and thrust the fluffy bundle into Damon's face, all but throwing it at him. Pandemonium ensued. Snowball swelled twice her normal size as her fur stood on end. She made a noise like water dropping on a red-hot griddle, and then she was a snarling, spinning cyclone that clawed Elena, swiped at Damon, and ricocheted off the walls before tearing out of the room. For an instant, Elena had the satisfaction of seeing Damon's night-black eyes slightly wider than usual. Then the lids drooped down, hooding them again, and Elena turned to face the reaction of the other occupants in the room. Margaret was just opening her mouth for a steam engine wail. Robert was trying to forestall it, hustling her off to find the cat. Bonnie had her back pressed flat against the wall, looking desperate. Matt and Aunt Judith were peering in from the kitchen and looked appalled. "I guess you don't have a way with animals," she said to Damon, and took the seat at the table. But it would make sense.
It does. It really
makes
does.
sense. She didn't want Damon to recognize her.
Yeah, or like her scent.
Yeah.
So
Get me out of here. She nodded to Bonnie, who reluctantly peeled herself off the wall and scuttled for her own seat before Damon could touch the chair. Bonnie's brown eyes slid around to follow him as he sat down in turn. After a few minutes, Robert reappeared with a tear-stained Margaret and frowned sternly at Elena. Matt pushed her own chair in silently, although his eyebrows were in his hair. As Aunt Judith arrived and the meal began, Elena looked up and down at the table. A bright haze seemed to lie over everything, and she had a feeling of unreality, but the scene itself took almost an unbelievably wholesome, like something out of a commercial. Just your average family sitting down to eat a turkey, she thought. One slightly flustered maiden aunt, worried about the peas.
What that reminded me of? This meme I saw at work on our door for the lab when we were waiting to collect blood. There's a meme where it's like, of 2020, it's like, you can only have 7 people for Thanksgiving, but 30 at a funeral. And people are like, well, this is a funeral for my turkey. So 30 people can come here.
Jeez.
For Thanksgiving. That was so funny. And that just reminded me of that meme.
Jeez.
Our
one slightly flustered maiden aunt, worried about the peas will be mushy and the rolls will be burnt. One comfortable uncle-to-be, one golden-haired teenage niece, and her tow-headed baby sister. One blue-eyed boy-next-door type. One sprightly girlfriend. One gorgeous vampire passing the candied yams. A typical American household.
Typical.
Bonnie spent the first half of the meal telegraphing, "What should I do?" messages to Elena with her eyes. But when all Elena telegraphed back was, "Nothing," she apparently decided to abandon herself to fate. She began to eat. Elena had no idea what to do. To be trapped like this was an insult, a humiliation, and Damon knew it. He had Aunt Judith and Robert dazzled, though, with compliments about the meal and the light chat about William and Mary. Even Margaret was smiling at him now, and soon enough Bonnie would go under. Fells Church is having a Founders Day celebration next week, Aunt Judith informed Damon, her thin cheeks faintly pink. "It would be nice if you could come back for that." "I'd like to," said Damon affably. Aunt Judith looked pleased. "And this year Elena has a big part in it. She's been chosen to be the spirit of Fells Church." "You must be proud of her," said Damon. "Oh, we are," Aunt Judith said. "So you should try to come back then." Elena broke in, buttering a roll furiously. "I've heard some news about Vicky," she said. "You remember the girl who has attacked?" She looked pointedly at Damon. "You know that girl that was attacked?"
Aggressive. Just like the butter of your biscuit.
"Oh, I'm sure you do. About my height, brown eyes, light brown hair. Anyways, she's getting worse." "Oh, dear," said Aunt Judith. "Yes, apparently the doctors can't understand it. She just keeps getting worse and worse, as if the attack was still going on." Elena kept her eyes on Damon's face as she spoke, but he displayed only the courteous interest. "Have some more stuffing," she repeated, propelling a bowl at him. "No, thank you. No, thank you. I'll have more of this, though." He held a spoonful of jellied cranberry sauce up to one of the candles so the light shone on it. "It's such a tantalizing color." Get it? Because it's red.
Like blood.
Yeah. Bonnie, like the rest of the people at the table, looked up at the candle when he did this, but Elena noticed she did not look down again. She remained gazing into the dancing flame, and slowly all expression disappeared from her face. Oh no, thought Elena, as a tingle of apprehension crept through her limbs. She'd seen this look before. She tried to get Bonnie's attention, but the girl seemed to see nothing but the candle. And then the elementary children put on the pageant in the town's history. Aunt Judith was saying to Damon, but the ending ceremony is done by older students. Elena, how many seniors will be doing readings this year? Just the 3 of us, Elena said, turning to address her aunt, and it was while she was looking at Aunt Judith's smiling face that she heard the voice. Death. Aunt Judith gasped. Robert paused with his fork halfway in his mouth. Elena wished wildly and absolutely hopelessly for Meredith. Death, said the voice again. Death is in this house. Elena looked around the table and saw that there was no one to help her. It's gonna be Robert.
Yep.
They were all staring at Bonnie, motionless as subjects in a photograph. Bonnie herself was staring into the candle flame. Her face was blank, her eyes wide, as they had been before when this voice spoke through her. Now those sightless eyes turned towards Elena. Your death, the voice said. Your death is waiting, Elena. It is. Bonnie seemed to choke. Then she pitched forward and almost landed in her dinner plate. There was an instant's paralysis, and then everybody moved. Robert jumped up and pulled at Bonnie's shoulders, lifting her. Bonnie's skin had gone bluish white. Her eyes were closed. Aunt Judith fluttered around her, dabbing at her face with a damp napkin. Damon watched with thoughtful, narrowed eyes. She's all right, Robert said, looking up with obvious relief. I think she just fainted. It must have been some kind of hysterical attack. But Elena didn't breathe again until Bonnie opened groggy eyes, and everyone was staring at her. It put an effective end to the dinner. Robert insisted that Bonnie must be taken home at once, and in the activity that followed, Elena found time for a whispered word with Damon. Get out. He raised his eyebrows. What? I said get out. Now. Go, or I'll tell them you're a killer. He looked reproachful. Don't you think a guest deserves a little more consideration? He said. But at her expression, he shrugged and smiled. Thank you for having me for dinner, he said aloud to Aunt Judith, who was walking past carrying a basket to the car. I hope I can return the favor sometime, to Elena, as he added, be seeing you. Well, that was clear enough, Elena thought, as Robert drove away with a somber Matt and a sleepy Bonnie. Aunt Judith was on the phone with Miss Connolly. I don't know what it is with these girls either, she said. First to Vicky, now Bonnie, and Elena has not been herself lately. While Aunt Judith talked and Margaret searched for the missing snowball, Elena paced. She should have called Stefan. That was all there was to it. She wasn't worried about Bonnie. The other times this had happened hadn't seemed to do permanent damage, and Damon would have better things to do than harass Elena's friends tonight. It's just a long chapter.
It's just a long chapter, too.
Another long chapter. We still got like 6 pages.
Ugh. It's just long and I'm tired.
He was coming here to collect a favor he'd done her. She knew without a doubt that this was the meaning of the final words, and it meant she would have to tell Stefan everything because she needed him tonight, needed his protection. Only what would Stefan do, despite all of her pleas and arguments last week? He had refused to take her blood. He had insisted that his powers would return without it, but Elena knew he was still vulnerable right now. Even if Stefan were here, could he stop Damon? Could he do it without being killed himself? Bonnie's house was no refuge, and Meredith was gone. There was no one to help her, no one she could trust. But the thought of waiting here alone tonight, knowing that Damon was coming, was unbearable. She heard Aunt Judith click down the receiver. Automatically, she turned towards the kitchen, Stefan's number running through her mind. Then she stopped and slowly turned around to look at the living room she just left. She looked at the floor-to-ceiling windows and at the elaborate fireplace with its beautifully scrolled molding. This room was part of the original house, the one that had been almost completely burned in the Civil War. Her own bedroom was just above. A great light was beginning to dawn. Elena looked at the molding around the ceiling, at where it joined the more modern dining room. Then she almost ran towards the stairs, her heart beating. Aunt Judith? Her aunt paused on the stairway. Aunt Judith, tell me something. Did Damon go into the living room? What? Aunt Judith blinked at her in distraction. Did Robert take Damon into the living room? Please think, Aunt Judith. I need to know. Why, no, I don't think so. No, he didn't. They came in and went straight to the dining room. Elena, what on earth? This last as Elena impulsively threw her arms around her and hugged her. Sorry, Aunt Judith. I'm just happy, said Elena. Smiling, she went back down the stairs. Well, I'm glad somebody's happy after the way dinner turned out, although that nice boy Damon seemed to be quite enjoying himself. Do you know, Elena? He seemed quite taken with you in spite of the way you were acting. Elena turned back around. So? Well, I thought you might give him a chance, that's all. I thought he was very pleasant and a kind young man I'd like to see around here. Elena goggled a moment, then swallowed to keep hysterical laughter from escaping. Her aunt was suggesting that she take up Damon instead of Stefan because Damon was safer, the kind of nice young man any aunt would like. Aunt Judith, she began, gasping, but then she realized it was useless. She shook her head mutely, throwing her hands up in defeat, and watched her aunt go up the stairs. Usually Elena slept with the door closed, but tonight she left it open and lay on her bed, gazing out into the darkened hallway. Every so often she glanced at the luminous numbers on the clock on the nightstand beside her. There was no danger that she would fall asleep. As the minutes scrolled by, she almost began to wish she could. Time moved with agonizing slowness. 11 o'clock, 11:30, midnight, 1 a.m., 1:30, 2. At 2:10, she heard a sound. She listened, still lying in her bed, to the faint whisper of the noise downstairs. She'd known he would find a way to get in if he wanted. If Damon was that determined, no lock would keep him out. Music from the dream she'd had that night at Bonnie's tinkled in her mind, a handful of plaintive, silvery notes. It woke strange feelings inside her, almost a daze, a dream herself. She got up and went to stand at the threshold. The hallway was dark, but her eyes had had a long time to adjust. She could see the darker silhouette making its way up the stairs. When it reached the top, she saw the swift, deadly glimmer of his smile. She waited unsmiling until he reached her and stood facing her, with only a yard of hardwood floor between them. The house was completely silent. Across the hall, Margaret slept at the end of the passage. Aunt Judith lay wrapped in dreams, unaware of what was going on outside the door. Damon said nothing, but he looked at her, his eyes taking in the long white nightgown with its high lacy neck. Elena had chosen it because it was the most modest one she owned, but Damon obviously thought it was attractive. She forced herself to stand quietly, but her mouth was dry and her heart was thudding dully. Now was the time. In another minute she would know. She backed up without a word, a gesture of invitation, leaving the doorway empty. She saw the quick flare in the bottomless eyes and watched him come eagerly towards her, and watched him stop. He stood just outside her room, plainly disconcerted. He tried again to step forward, but could not. Something seemed to be preventing him from moving any further. On his face, surprise gave way to puzzlement and then anger. He looked up, his eyes ranking over the lintel, scanning the ceiling on the other side of the threshold. Then, as the full realization hit him, his lips pulled back from his teeth in an animal snarl. Safe on her side of the doorway, Elena laughed softly. It had worked. My room and the living room below are all that's left of the old house, she told him, and of course that was a different dwelling place, one you were not invited into and never will be. His chest was heaving with anger, his nostrils dilated, his eyes wild. Waves of black rage emanated from him. He looked as if he were about to tear down the walls with his hands, which were twitching and clenching with fury. Triumph and relief made Elena giddy. You'd better go now, she said. There's nothing for you here. 1 minute more, those menacing eyes blazed into hers, and then Damon turned around. But he didn't head for the stairway. Instead, he took one step across the hall and laid his hand on the door of Margaret's room. Elena started forward before she knew what she was doing. She stopped in the doorway, gasping and casing the trim. her own breath coming hard. His head whipped around and he smiled at her, a slow, cruel smile. He twisted the doorknob slightly without looking at it. His eyes, where pools of liquid ebony remained on Elena. Your choice, he said. Elena stood very still, feeling as if winter was inside her. Margaret was just a baby. He couldn't mean it. No one would be such a monster as to hurt a 4-year-old. But there was no hint of softness or compassion in Damon's face. He was a killer, and the weak were his prey. She remembered the dreadful animal snarl that had transformed his handsome features, and she knew that she would never leave Margaret to him. Everything seemed to be happening in slow motion. She saw Damon's hand on the doorknob. She saw those merciless eyes. She was walking through the doorway, leaving behind the only safe place she knew. Death was in this house, Bonnie had said, and now Elena had gone to meet death of her own free will. She bowed her head to conceal the helpless tears that had come to her eyes. It was over. Damon had won. She did not look up to see him advance on her, but she felt the air stir around her, making her shiver, and then she was enveloped in soft, endless blackness, which wrapped around her like a great bird's wings. I don't know where my bookmark is. Oh well, I'll find it later. Oh, it fell on the floor. That would be why.
It fell.
Chewie probably pushed it down there.
My goodness.
Well, that was a lot.
That was a lot. Nah.
I like the cleverness of having her thinking of the 2 separate households.
Yeah. I really like that.
That was very clever.
It was very clever. I agree.
I don't think Damon's gonna kill her though. I think he wants her to come to him of like her own free will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not being coerced.
Because he likes her, so he wants her to like him.
Yeah.
On her own will.
Which is why he's like getting close to her family, getting close, trying to get close to her friends.
So he's like immersed in her life.
Yeah. So it's harder for her to like escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh gosh, poor kitty.
I know.
Like kitty cat was so scared.
Poor Catherine.
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 Catherine. Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was Catherine.
Me too.
I would bet money on that.
Me too.
With all of foreshadowment.
So. Absolutely. Yeah.
You're like, I'm just tired. I'm done.
Just tired. It's been a long.
You're like, give me food.
Yeah,
I'm
really
done.
Hungry. I didn't eat today. I had little cuties and some applesauce. That was it. Like, I was starving.
Well, good thing dinner's in the oven. It should be ready in, I think it says 8 minutes and 29 seconds or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, still gonna make the pasta though.
What do you guys think? How do you guys feel after those 2 long chapters? What do you think will happen? What are your predictions?
What do you think Damon's gonna do? Do you think he's gonna kill her?
Yeah, I don't think he is.
I don't think so either.
I think he would get close enough to where it would seem like he was going to, just to get the reaction out of Elena, but I don't think he would.
He's such a bully.
Yeah, at least at this early in like the relationship or like getting to know each other, I don't think he would.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's that. Catherine is the cat.
Catherine.
And Damon's just doing whatever he can to try to almost force Elena to accept that he's in her life now.
Yeah.
And
just egg them on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Basically.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have to say. I don't have anything else.
What's his name? Put it in the comments.
Yeah.
Still deciding.
And we'll vote, I guess.
Yep.
On like the top 2. And we'll have you guys help us pick between the top 2. And
It'll be fun. We'll go from there.
It'll be fun.
Alright.
Have like a little video just for him.
Or her.
Or her, whatever we decide.
Yeah, we haven't really decided.
We'll come up with what you guys think. Do you think this is a girl or a boy? What do you think? What do you feel? What are your feelings? Look at that little tail. Look at that little tail.
It's so cute.
So cute. All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Good night.
Bye.